if everybody would just like sketch an eggy kind of shape, not an ellipse, or not a circle, and not necessarily an ellipse, but just like an eggy ellipse. Okay. And then if you imagine straight down in space, underneath that, draw a horizontal ellipse. So this is like the shadow of that object. So you can now come in and crosshatch through here. So this object is creating a shadow on the ground, kind of like that, underneath it. So if you start to think about just a simple egg-like shape, you now think like, okay, if I imagine this in space, I'm looking down on this egg, then up on top, this would be the top. You can do a contour line over the top. You could do another one in the back. You could do another one through the front. Through the middle would be here. And over here is something like that. So this is like an egg in space. These are our contour lines, you know? I'll try and slow it down. Give me a shout out, guys, and tell me to slow down sometimes too. Now, you can always render a little bit of value through the top of the egg, right through here, almost like here, you know? And then you can even feather it outward. You can see I'm doing ellipses to do it. But that would be like, if we start to do like a chrome kind of egg, or like a bodywork panel, like a car body or something like that that's painted surface, maybe this is reflecting the sky. So whatever your car body surface is, it's reflecting the sky or a dark ceiling or something. So you can add a little bit of value at the top, you know, and then you can let the other part of the surface kind of illuminate. So if I start to develop this egg a little further, what I might do is start to develop like the profile line here is where the surface of the egg disappears from our view underneath, you know, and then the egg comes back up into the light here. Now here's where stylistically you can let your line fade off because it's coming up into the light. And same thing over here. You can let your line fade off as it comes up over the top and into the light. That's a choice. You know, you can let the line fade and transition as it moves around. So some of this is like what I'm leveraging in the drawing, you know, is like this like surface logic, the idea of the body rolling. Now at any point in this, you could say, you know what, I'm going to put a crease right through here. And what does that mean? Oh, it means that the body work is actually folding here maybe. So it goes from rounded on top to a crease line here. You know, so that means that now you have to come back on that crease line and create a feather away from it, or a gradient away from it, so that there's a little bit more contrast at that crease. And then the crease folds up into the upper surface. So you start to push in on it and create this contrast of folds, you know? So that's all we're seeing when we look at complex car design in a way, is like they're just making some of these crease choices, and they've got some stylistic cues too. And then you could actually fold it back out if you want. So now the contour line, there's a crease in here maybe. And a crease is where an opportunity to also make it darker. You could either go darker or lighter, either way. And now I've folded this football back out. So there's a line over the top, it folds down, and then it folds back out into like a fin kind of design right there, you know? So that's just pushing contour lines around, you know, to try and create the illusion of this surface change, you know, all from an egg, you know. So you could practice eggs all the time, you know. Start thinking about like the surface curving over the top of that in some way, and just flatten it out in some places, create some bevels, some folds. That's all you see in car design, you know, Priuses or whatever you're seeing. It's just making choices of like those fold lines and edges and things, you know. So those are exercises everybody can do. You can do those all the time. You don't need an assignment to do those exercises. You know, you could start with a loopy shape. You see something on, like I'm looking at an image online, I go, oh, that's kind of cool. And then that thing sweeps up, and then I'm going to avoid this drawing. So I'll just kind of create an edge here. And I'll do a double edge kind of here. And then I'm going to start to give the expression that this folds away from this crease right here. So this is a crease now. Crease, and then this is folding away from the eye, underneath. And that brings that surface out, you know? So keep your hand parallel. And then maybe bury it into the ground right there. A nice strong contrast tonality where it's like really deep as it meets the ground plane here. So this is like where it's touching the floor. So I could build that up even farther and deeper. And then maybe this thing rolls and there's like a nose here. And if it's a nose, then it's a rounding. And that means I can either develop that deeper but I got to get back to some sort of plane logic here. And I'm again looking for contrast between this undercut fold and then maybe this changes direction here. So I get a little bit more change to that curve right there. And now I'm just starting to fill in the whites, and by filling in the whites, it just makes it feel darker through here. If I keep going a little bit deeper, a little bit more closure, it feels a little bit darker. And I just smooth that out as I build up that surface right there. So it smooths out, you know? So this starts to create some illusion of surface change and complexity, you know? And here I need more contrast between that dark surface change, which is now rolling into that surface. I need to back off because I'm seeing it different. As I work, I'm just seeing the lines and the options different. So I have to constantly navigate and adapt to some fold or some crease that I've now added in. And now this surface is changing. So I'm going to change and gradient this down as it meets the floor here, you know? So again, I can go to my indigo pencils if I need to sharpen them. You know, if the tip is getting a little bit rounded, if the tip is getting a little rounded on the pencil, you know, sharpen it. I see all too often what could have been decent drawings just kind of butchered because students are too, there's no nice way to say it, but students are just too lazy to sharpen the pencil once in a while. You know, so now I can start to burn in some depth under that crease right there and under this kind of bridge-like structure. And look how this thing's really starting to pop with some folds and creases and some change of direction. Some implication of the ground plane. You know, that little sketch, I don't know what it is really, but it's got some nice little bits to it. Now there's some stuff here that I could still, you know, I could maybe evolve, do something with it. I could leave it alone too and back off, and I could still use this guy too if I feel like playing around with this a little bit more. This method, this highlighter pen, I mean, it's not going to save a drawing, but it could add some kind of interesting character to it. I mean, if the drawing's got bad lines and bad sort of expression of line, this is not going to fix that. Yeah, it's just going to accentuate some qualities. So anyway, that's some kind of weird bridge-like piece of furniture, but it's got expressive sensibility, expressive style of. I'm borrowing from the image that I see on the web. It's fine. I look at it and then I move on. Like I look at it for some ideas and then I do my drawing. So I don't just stare at that and try to copy what I see on a. I mean, I think if you do that approach, you'll really bottom. You'll bottom out. Like if I just sit there and try to draw what I see on the computer monitor, the something else that somebody else designed, my drawing will just never take on a life of its own and become its own thing. It's always going to be, and your drawing is just never going to be a very good drawing in of itself, because you have to practice this idea of drawing, and you're not going to get that from trying to copy some piece of furniture by, Zaha Hadid, this expression of line and surface change. You have to just find that in your hand, and that's what this is all about, It's hard to do this on a glass tablet, get your body involved with the glass tablet in the same way. Students wind up drawing with their fingertips too much. You draw too much like in here with the fingertips. You're never going to make smooth shapes if you're drawing from your fingertips. So that's something that everybody needs to practice, I'm not sure that the tablet really will help with that. I haven't been convinced. You could push on me a little bit and be like, yeah, but Lefort, you're supposed to be really accommodating because of our. No, I don't know. This doesn't have anything to do with COVID and working from home versus working any other way. I just think the tablet doesn't engage the body the same way. So it's not a great argument, but one of the methods that you use on the tablet though is layers. So then there's that element with the tablet. You got to make sure you use layers. There's some really great approaches, but yeah. This class is a very traditional drawing class. It's a traditional making class. The materials are traditional. Now, maybe in a couple of years, or maybe even in another year, this whole class goes all digital, and then all this stuff is out the window. And because we move towards like crude modeling and using rapid prototyping and for 3D modeling and things like that. But those things are not a panacea by any means. Rapid prototyping is extremely expensive for what you get. You could spend $40 on this little thing for prototyping that, and it could take you a long time when you could just make a crude paper model that would solve your questions with like $2 in material and 5 minutes of your time. So a lot of times, yeah, there's a lot of loaded issues with digital, just jumping to digital as if it's like the solution to working remotely or something. I don't know. You could show me a few drawings in the digital tablet if you really want. Make an argument for it. Defend your position.